Okay, so today I'm going to be reviewing the film Thor. It's a film that came out, I think, last year, and it's a superhero film based on like Norse mythology, or rather, it's a superhero film based on a comic book based on Norse mythology, and it is of course one of the films that have been made over the past few years that's sent up to lead into the Avengers, which is out just now. Quite bluntly, I'm going to say right off the back, I thought this was very good. I thought it was probably the best of all the films that have been made to lead into the Avengers. I thought it was entertaining, quite well acted, and told a very good story, very engrossing story. When I first heard that the guy who directed this was Kenneth Branagh, I was really surprised. Actually, I thought it was a joke, but it's because, well, traditionally Kenneth Branagh has been known for doing films based on Shakespeare plays. Like he did a very good adaptation of Henry V, which I thought was quite an achievement, considering that he made something really good out of one of Shakespeare's weaker plays. So it was surprising to hear that this Shakespearean classical director and actor was making a superhero film. But when you think about it, it really does make sense, because the story of this film is quite Shakespearean. It's a son that displeases his father, that rebels against him, and then his father casts him out of his position of power, and he has to live with the commoner and then build his way back up, realising certain values of life, etc. So that story is quite Shakespearean, and of course the dialogue in this film, the language given by Thor and the various Norse gods, it's gloriously archaic and quite fun to watch. I mean, what you hear people say all the time is that they sound as if they're from Lord of the Rings. So that, I suppose, that kind of gives you an example of how they talk in this film. The story, I gave you a quick rendition of it a minute ago, but it does feel overall quite epic, and I think that was mostly Kenneth Branagh's doing. And as I said, when you do think about it, he was a great choice for doing a film like this. The sets towards the beginning of the film, I mean, obviously they are computer generated, but they are very well done, and they do feel tangible, as if the people in the film are really there. Of course, the basic story to the film, as I said a minute ago, it is quite. I mean, you could argue that it is cliched, it's been done before, but it takes such a stylised approach to it, and it tells it so well, with so many little intricacies and flourishes in the story here and there, that it really does. The story being cliched, that notion is really transcended by the overall feel in the telling of the story. So the story is, I would say, it's not the main point of the film. I think the main point of the film, the focal point, is the main character, is Thor. But the story, I think, serves its purpose well, and it is really engrossing, really entertaining. I mean, the film does exceed the 2-hour mark, but you're never, in my view, you're never bored during it. You're always quite hooked onto it. So it's good in that respect. And the action scenes do have some levity to them. Like, I was watching, I think it was Iron Man 2, and I didn't think that film was good overall. I thought it was just kind of average. It was disappointing. The problem with that film, one of the problems of that film, was the action scenes, and that, maybe with one or two exceptions, they were like scenes from a video game, or they were shot to the point where you just weren't really interested in them or engrossed. There was no real peril. But that wasn't the case here. You did get the feeling that it was happening. There was something at stake, and it was real. Especially during the fist fight scenes at one part of the film. I thought the acting overall was fine. There was no problems there. Thor, the guy who plays Thor, Chris Hemsworth, I thought he had a real energy to his performance. Like he really did the he really did the sort of fish out of water part of the story quite well, and he really did the sort of the character arc. Like he goes from being, like a selfish brat basically at the beginning of the film, going through like the trials and tribulations of being stripped of his powers and what have you, and he goes to being he grows as a character, and it's believable. And the idea that he can only pull the hammer from the stone when he's reached, I can't remember how it's put in the film, but when he's reached sort of maturity, it is believable. They give it so much build up that by the end of the film it is believable when he finally extracts it. The rest of the acting, Natalie Portman, I don't think she was okay. I think the problem that her performance had in the film is that she is a very good actress and she can give a really good performance, but I kind of get the feel that she can only really do it when working with a script. And I think the problem here was that the script wasn't really good for character development besides Thor, and they didn't really give her much to do in terms of lines of dialogue. There was no real moment of great characterization with her. But I thought, in terms of just giving off an impression, I thought she had a good performance. It wasn't bad, I didn't think, but I thought her performance, it definitely was lacking something, and I think that was a decent script in terms of dialogue. The rest of the actors in the film, in general, I thought the character development, besides Thor and besides the bad guy, Loki, I thought besides those two characters, I thought the character development wasn't very, very good at all. And I suppose when you've got a 2.5 hour film like this, you don't really have time for it. I mean, that's not excusing it, but I can understand that they don't really have the time for it. So when it comes to the minor characters, like Natalie Portman, like her father, I thought they actually did it quite well. Like the actors that are playing them they compensate for the lack of time that they get for the character development, and overall it is quite. They pull it off quite successfully, I'd say. The bad guy, I thought they had a really interesting premise for him. In fact, I shouldn't really say because it's a spoiler, but let's just say there's a revelation about his character towards the beginning of the film, and it really sets up the idea that he's not who he thought he was. And I think they made a good attempt at trying to show his emotions about it, but I think they made the jump from frightened and alarmed at this new discovery to maniac, basically. I think they made that jump a bit too quickly. But other than that, I do think they did his performance was okay, and I look forward to seeing what they do with him in the Avengers. Anthony Hopkins, of course, yes, it's a role that he has done many, many times, but it's never tiring to see him in a film, and I don't think there's anyone else that really could have played Odin, the father of the gods, to any greater ability. The action scenes in the film, I thought they were very well filmed, competently made. I think I've already touched on that slightly, but I'll say a bit more. I referred it to. I gave an analogy to Iron Man, the second Iron Man, where the action scenes weren't that great, and said that here you do get a feeling of levity to them, and they are well done. Maybe shot just a bit too fast, in terms of the editing, but other than that, yeah, they were fine. The comedy of the film, yes, there was comedy in the scenes on Earth. I thought it was okay in general. Some of the fish out of water gags were really good. There's a scene where I can't remember exactly how it goes, but he goes into a pet shop and asks, "Give me a horse," They say we don't have horses, we only have dogs and cats, and he says, "Well, give me one large enough to ride on." Stuff like that is funny. But there were a couple of moments where I think it was like the comic relief character, like Natalie Portman's female friend, and it was really cringy. I felt like really out of place. You couldn't imagine, like, just the way they set up the characters, you couldn't imagine this person sort of being in the same circle as them, and the jokes are quite cringy. But overall, I thought when they attempted comedy in other circumstances, it generally worked, and it felt concurrent with the tone of the film. If you have the contrast between like like the realm of the gods, Asgard, you get the contrast between Asgard, which is sort of serious and classical, and you've got everyone talking as if they're in Lord of the Rings, and you've got the contrast between that and the human world, which is you've got the comedy and the lessened seriousness. But so it did give it emphasised the contrast, the comedy, so it did serve a purpose. Another criticism of the film, I think, was the ending. I don't know, it didn't really end with any tone of finality. Like, obviously this has been set up for not just the Avengers, it's also been set up for a sequel of its own. But I thought the way they ended the film, it didn't really have a sense of closure. It didn't really have a sense that everything had been linked up properly, even though superficially it had. So I suppose that was just a criticism of tone, really, that it didn't really feel like an ending. It just sort of ended abruptly. But overall, the film in most respects was very good. It was entertaining. It held your interest the whole way through. I liked the archaic dialogue. Like, that's always fun to see in a film. The premise of like the Norse gods, like, of course I understand it's based on a comic book. It's not supposed to depict the actual concepts of Norse mythology, but I did enjoy seeing it, because when I was younger I used to always think that like the mythology, Norse mythology, was really interesting. So I had a bit of foreknowledge stored at the back of my brain that was opened up whilst watching this film. So that was quite interesting. That was quite enjoyable. Overall, as a rating, I would say 7 out of 10, and that's quite a generous rating for me, because that means very good. Overall, a few issues, like the lack of character development, except for Thor. The ending didn't really end with a tone of finality, but overall, it was well directed. They couldn't have chosen a better director, really. The CGI was well done. The acting was very well done. I mean, even the characters that weren't well developed, they did give a sense of, they did work with their characters and their performances really well in spite of that. It was well made, entertaining, and told with lots of real skill, I would say. That's the end of the review. I suppose I should answer the question, am I going to review the Avengers? It is out. Hopefully I'll get a chance to see it. I'm not entirely sure if I will. If I do, I will definitely review it on here. If not, I'll just have to wait for it to come out. So don't expect a review, I would say, but if I can get a chance to see it, of course I will review it. So overall, Thor, 7 out of 10. Very good.